What's going on, guys? Jose here with Diamond Ranks Media.
What's up? I'm Nick. We got a special guest, Hunter, with us today.
Hi, I'm Hunter. Thanks for having me on the podcast.
So, crazy thing going on right now. The Chiefs made a 28-point comeback against the Texans at halftime. 28 straight points they've scored. Pretty crazy.
I gotta say, the playoffs have been pretty interesting so far. How are you feeling about them, Hunter?
There's a lot going on. I mean, the Titans stunning the Baltimore Ravens. They had the perfect game plan to beat them. They stopped Lamar. It was a great game.
I gotta say, it's just, you going into the playoffs, you've seen the teams that were in it, and you sit there and you look at it, and you see the Patriots out early, and it's just interesting to see the team that's been so dominant for so long, and when you got a head coach like Bill Belichick, the first round against a team like the Titans, you'd think they were going to walk right through them, and they're gone. And then the Ravens, as well as they played all year long, come in against the Titans again, and the Titans stun them. I mean, is this a team that you guys think going forward could win the whole thing?
Yeah, I'm still depressed about the Pats game, but they have taken it to every opponent they've had. I mean, they came into the playoffs, one of the hottest teams in the AFC. They have been tremendous. Mike Vrabel has been a great head coach. Ryan Tannehill has been spectacular at quarterback. He's just a game manager, and Derrick Henry is a monster.
Things he's doing is pretty crazy.
Well, I mean, imagine being a defense, him coming towards you. 6'7", 290 pounds.
Something like that.
That's a big boy.
No, but honestly, I was on Twitter yesterday, and one of the guys that writes for the Providence Journal summed it up the best. He almost changes the game like Rob Gronkowski. You have somebody that's that big that shouldn't be able to move that quick and that agile, and he's just taking it to NFL defenses.
Yeah, for sure.
That Titans O-line isn't a joke either. They're making small holes, and he's just pounding through them. Yeah, the Titans are crazy right now. Their defense is no joke either. They're shutting down Lamar Jackson and one of the most dominant players of all time for the NFL, Tom Brady, last week.
But Tom Brady, the interesting case going on there is this could be his last season in a Patriots uniform. And you being a Patriots fan, how do you feel about that? Do you think he's coming back?
I love Tom Brady, and he had an off year, but...
Off year compared to what he normally does.
Yeah, off year to compare. He still had put up stats. It's just he didn't have the team around him. I personally think he's going to come back. I think all they have to do is build up a little bit around him, maybe get a tight end. But with what he's done in New England over the past 2 decades, especially this last decade, putting up 3 rings as he ages, starting off, obviously, against the Seahawks, it's been crazy to think that it's coming to an end soon with 40-year-old quarterbacks, especially Drew Brees, Tom Brady. It's the end of an era. I mean, Peyton Manning retired a couple years ago. Tom Brady is one of my favorite players all time, definitely the last decade. I mean, I've grown up watching him, but this last decade he's just been dominant.
Speaking of last decade, let's get into talking about that and some of our favorite players from the past decade that we enjoyed watching over the past 10 years. What do you got?
I've always loved, especially like being a big baseball fan, I've always loved watching Derek Jeter. He's been, obviously not so much over the last decade. He only played pretty much the first half, but he was still such a fun guy to watch. Always the team first mentality and everything about him. Always on great Yankee teams. Been a great guy to watch.
Played with a lot of heart. Great leader.
Always, yeah.
Great leader.
Amazing player, too. I mean, I'm a huge Red Sox fan, but he's one of those players where even with the rivalry of the Yankees, you just got to respect him and what he stood for and the way he played the game.
Of course.
And for me, I got to say, one of my favorite athletes in the past decade would have to be Cristiano Ronaldo. I mean, I know you guys aren't much soccer fans, but for me, I'm being Portuguese and watching the European Cup, and unfortunately in the final, Ronaldo had injured his knee and didn't get to play. But watching him all the way from qualifiers up until the finals, he just absolutely dominated and did everything he could to give Portugal that championship. And you look at him in club play. I mean, currently in Italy with Juventus, but even over there, Italy's a really good league, very good defensive teams over there, and he still just finds a way to continue to play dominant. And then his time over in Real Madrid, where he spent most of this decade, and he brought that team multiple UEFA championships. He's won La Liga for them several times. I mean, when you think about dominant athletes and you look at, players who have been really well throughout a decade, and he's set scoring records, he's set assist records, and he's done everything you possibly could on the pitch.
Yeah, the thing about Cristiano Ronaldo is, and I'm not a soccer guy. I do watch it occasionally. I like international play, the World Cup and all that. But the thing about Cristiano Ronaldo and Messi and them is they have taken to America, almost popularizing it a little bit in America, where there weren't a ton of players before that you could, tie yourself to and say, oh, I love Real Madrid and everything because of the players. Now Ronaldo and Messi have changed the game where you can say, even if you're not a huge soccer fan, I love watching Ronaldo play and the effect he's had on the game.
Definitely a unique talent, to say the least. Any of the players to you stand out over the past decade?
Obviously, we've already touched on Tom Brady. I've always been connected to him through me being a Patriots fan. But my favorite player in all sports throughout the past decade has got to be Tiger Woods. I mean, between him battling through the injuries and the conspiracy and the controversy that he's had in these past years, I mean, he's fought through so much, from him being one of the most dominant athletes all time to him potentially never playing golf again and coming back and winning a major championship when he won the Masters in 2019. It's just been terrific to watch.
Yeah, for sure. Another guy that I've always liked, been a great player for pretty much most of the decade, is a guy Von Miller. He wasn't really talked about too much until halfway through the decade. And then when the Broncos came out 2015 with that unbelievable defense they had, with guys like Von Miller, DeMarcus Ware, Aqib Talib, he just blew up with all the talk about him. He won Super Bowl MVP with the couple touchdowns he helped them score. He was always such a fun guy to watch, such a fast linebacker. Been so strong for them over the past decade. Definitely the reason they've gotten that ring.
Another one for me would have to be Buster Posey. Very, very solid catcher, and definitely a big piece of that, San Francisco Giants and that big run they had.
Dynasty, yeah.
And they, just amazing to watch, and he was the spearhead on that. Not a guy that was going to hit you 30 bombs, not a guy that was going to hit the ball 450 feet, but he always found a way to get on base. He always found a way to drive in the runs. He always found a way to help that team win. And he called a great ball game behind the plate. And this past season, not so good. But, if you go back and you watch what he has done throughout his career, you can't help but to tip your cap to the man and respect what he did for that organization.
Oh, for sure. And for so long, you never heard any bad things talked about Buster Posey. He just quietly dominated his position, really had no competition throughout the decade, up until the last couple years with guys like JT Realmuto and Gary Sanchez. He just so quietly dominated his position. He was such a great hitter, called a great game, played great defense. There was really nothing bad about the game Buster Posey played.
Yeah, the thing about Buster Posey is, like you said, he was never in the magazines. He was never getting talked about, unless you're huge into baseball. But he's one of those guys that always did the little things that helped win games. He was always got the hit when you need it to. He's not going to hit 30 bombs, but he'll hit you when you need a bomb. He'll
For
get
sure.
guys across the plate.
And he was a great part of that 2017 WBC that the Team America won. He had a couple big hits for them. He had a big home run in one of the final games. Big part of that team. Always been very clutch for the Giants especially.
So all the talk, partner, you had mentioned about Tom Brady, and you mentioned Von Miller. How do you guys feel about Drew Brees?
One of the greatest players in NFL history. I mean, he's not getting put up on, or he's just starting to get put on lists. Like, he didn't make the NFL all-time 100 list, which was a lot of old heads talking and a lot of classical players such as Dan Marino and Joe Montana being put on that list. But Drew Brees is definitely up there as one of the greatest, probably top 5 quarterback of all time. If he has more rings, he's probably in the conversation, probably top 3 with Peyton Manning, Joe Montana, and Tom Brady.
I mean, he's just a phenomenal passer. There's no other way to look at it. This is a guy that can squeeze the ball in between 2 defenders and hit a receiver's hands, no problem. Very accurate, very on point. And one thing with him, too, was one of the greatest mistakes the Chargers ever made when they had traded him away to continue to start Phillip Rivers. And, that's going to lead me into the fact that Phillip Rivers is one of my favorite players to watch. And this past decade, it's been great. This is a guy that, has had weapons around him, but the Chargers' defense never really stacked up in order for them to continue to win games. But Phillip Rivers is a guy that, to see him throw for 300, 400 yards was never a shock. He had a great arm, and he was always there. Yeah, you got a lot of the talk of all the interceptions he throws and, things like that. But to me, Phillip Rivers is definitely a great quarterback.
For sure.
Phillip Rivers was great in the fact that like you said, he throws a lot of interceptions, but that's going to happen when you're throwing and you have to carry a team. I mean, when he had LaDainian Tomlinson, he was terrific. And that's when they had most of their success, because Phillip Rivers, when he's not throwing 40 to 50 times a game, maybe he's not getting 400 yards like you said, but he's making the throws, and it's been kind of depressing this year because he hasn't been great with the talent around him, but that's what happens when you get older and they're at the end of the career. I mean, some of these players, Tom Brady has probably only a couple years left, same with Drew Brees, Phillip Rivers might be done, Eli Manning got benched this year. All these great players that have been good over the decade are starting to come to the end of their career, and they're starting to lead the way for these more athletic, mobile quarterbacks like Lamar Jackson and Pat Mahomes, who are both terrific and great to watch.
You know who's the guy over the past decade I've always loved to watch? Such an exciting guy. Javier Baez. In baseball, he's one of the most exciting players in the league. A lot of people hate on him for no reason, really. He's such an unbelievable base runner. He has great defense. He's absolute magic with his glove. And he's not talked about enough. Everybody's like, oh, he's overrated and everything just because of his strikeout to walk numbers. He's such a talented player. All around, he can run, he can field, he can hit. He does all of them. And they're not talked about as much as they should be because everybody just shrugs him off as overrated.
Speaking of the defensive end, with him, extremely versatile.
For sure, he can play 4 different positions for the Cubs if they need it.
And he can play at just about a Gold Glove caliber. That's the thing. He's great, and I love watching Javi Baez. He is an absolute blast to watch. And this is a guy that he'll put the ball in the gap. He'll hit you a double. He'll put the ball on the ground and beat it out for a single. He'll put the ball over the fence. On the other side, he'll make the crazy diving plays. And when you see things like that, it makes you want to continue to watch.
For sure, such a great player to watch.
Yeah. What I love about him is he's one of the league's only true 5-tool players. I mean, he can steal a base, he can hit it on the ground, he can play Gold Glove caliber defense, he can hit it out. He really has every facet of the game you want. He can be one of the most exciting players just because of his style of play. He mixes that new age, young kid flair with that old style of play that all the older fans love to watch, but he, like I said, he brings the younger flair, which kids can love and attach to him. I know that's why you like him, Nick.
The funny thing about him was when he was getting scouted, on his 20/80 scale, the thing that people thought he was horrible at was his defense. His best rating was power, and nobody was talking about his defense or his arm. And now, honestly, at this point, everybody talks about the flashy plays he makes and everything. It's crazy to think that they didn't think he'd ever be good on the defensive end in the infield.
Another player I love to watch, and I'm not a gigantic baseball fan, but one guy that isn't a Red Sox that I always like to watch is Jose Altuve. He is one of those guys who you can really attach yourself to. He is, 5'6"? He's very short. He is...
Change up!
He is very good at listening to trash cans when he's up at bat. But he is one of those players that used to be a 5-tool player. He could hit it out like he did against the Yankees in the ALCS this year to send them to the World Series.
No, but I definitely agree with you. He's a great player all around. I really don't think he even needs to be a part of what the Astros are doing. He can do it on his own. He's a great pure hitter.
The last couple of years, his defense hasn't been as great along with his speed, but that's just from getting older and the way he plays the game. He's so small.
The speed's starting to go downhill with the leg injuries he's had, but he's still not even close to slow. He's still up there. He can steal you 30 bags a year if he really needs to.
He's patient at the plate, too. He's a guy that's going to fight pitches off and...
When you know what pitch is coming, you can.
Yeah, don't throw him. Don't throw him a fastball because he not even just that about the trash can jokes. If you throw him a fastball, he knows how to hit fastballs.
All right, another guy I like, and he's been terrific to watch over the decade. And I know you guys don't like hockey all that much, but Patrick Kane. He has been terrific over the decade. He's part of this dynasty that is just starting, it looks, to come to an end with the Blackhawks. But between him and Taves, that Blackhawks team has been incredible to watch over this decade. And they put up one of the best runs of all time in hockey. I mean, they took out an incredible 2013 Bruins team. They've just been great to watch, and they've fought tooth and nail to get out of the Western Conference. It has been great to watch him.
If you're going to talk best players of a decade, you got to talk a man who is the face of American sports. That's LeBron James and the absolute dominance he has had for the past decade. And this guy, he can do it all. He can dish the rock. He can slam it home. He can shoot. He finds a way to win no matter what is around him. You mean you can put standard guys who just aren't that great, and he finds a way to make them better and perform.
The thing about LeBron is he's been so great, and in the NBA, everybody thinks it's easier to win because of the Warriors and their super teams, and they always make fun of LeBron for his 3-6 record in the finals. The man made 9 straight NBA finals up until last year when he joined the Lakers in that Western Conference. You can knock on him all you want, but 9 straight NBA finals is one of the most impressive things ever accomplished in sports. When you think of American sports and just even sports worldwide, you're going to be hard-pressed to find somebody that doesn't know who... Oh, God damn it, Nick.
Another guy who's been an unbelievable athlete over the last decade is Mike Trout. Since 2012, he's been a top 3 finalist in MVP every single year. He's won 3 of them, 2014, 16, and 19. Every year going into the year, he's always the guy talked about, will Trout win an MVP this year? He's just such a consistently good player. Even some years he's been hurt, but he's still been in the conversation. He gives you an unbelievable bat. He's really fast on the bases and in the field, has a great glove. There's just really nothing that Mike Trout can't do. He's another one, like we were talking about, Javi Baez is just a 5-tool player. Doesn't have a hole in his game, really.
Yeah, Mike Trout he's on pace to being one of the greatest baseball players ever played the game.
Oh, for sure.
He can, what can't you do?
Exactly.
You know,
everything.
He can do everything on the baseball field. Like you said, he can hit, he can field. He can do literally anything you ask him to at every moment. Another part of sports that isn't looked at as much is the mixed martial arts, especially in the UFC. With some of the great fighters that have come out of the UFC, Khabib has been huge in the last couple of years, but the face of UFC in the decade has been Conor McGregor.
Absolutely.
He started at a lighter weight, I think it was the featherweight division, and he dominated that. He just had extraordinary power. He looked like an absolute twig, and he didn't look like he had any muscle on his body. But he packed tremendous power that rivaled guys at 170. He could compete, and he could absolutely dominate everybody in that division. Jose Aldo came out, he fought him, and he just destroyed him. Everybody was saying Aldo was going to be the guy to dethrone Conor McGregor as the big guy in the division. I think it lasted 3 seconds before McGregor knocked his ass out.
All this talk of hearing, who you guys like within the decade just makes me curious to who your all-time favorite athletes are.
For me, it's a little weird one, but I'd have to go with Nick Swisher. Since 2009, when he got traded to the Yankees, he's always been such an exciting player to watch. He's been in the league since 2004, I believe he came up. He was a great power hitter with Oakland, and then into the Yankees, he turned into more of a well-rounded player, played pretty good defense, gave you 100 walks in a season, could give you a good average. I've always liked him. He was always such a great guy in the clubhouse. He was always so funny to watch. He's always been such a great just guy to watch. I've loved the way he's played the game his whole career. Hunter?
To reiterate on what we were on before, Tiger Woods is probably my favorite athlete of all time. From what we touched on by this decade, with him winning the Masters after all his controversies and all his injury history, a lot of times we forget. In the 2000s and even the late 90s, sorry, but even in the late 90s to the late 2000s, Tiger Woods was probably the most dominant athlete in sports. He was definitely the most iconic, and he is responsible for bringing a sport that was pretty much reserved for old white people to the popular media. He basically made golf cool for a lot of people for a long while, and he's one of the reasons golf's alive today. I mean, you guys I know aren't huge in golf, but you know who Tiger Woods is. He's almost on that same level. with LeBron and Brady as you know who Tiger Woods is?
For me, I'd have to go with my all-time favorite athlete. I definitely have to say Chipper Jones. Growing up, he brought a lot of excitement to the baseball game, and he's a guy that could hit 300 from both sides of the plate, and just it's not often you see a switch hitter with the talents to hit, such as Chipper Jones. And he wasn't a bad defender. I mean, he wasn't exactly a guy that was a top-tier defender. He would take home Gold Gloves, but what he did on the offensive end, and through the '90s with the Braves and the teams they had, he was just such a nice piece to that. And when you get to watch a guy like him, it's the same thing with Trout. It's what was he going to do next, And I had a lot of fun, as a kid. I got to see a lot of really good players, and the one that stands out to most to me is definitely Chipper Jones. So, with that being said, what do you guys think? What do you think for like the next decade? Some players that you think can really.
All right, so for the next decade, the obvious choice right now for football is Pat Mahomes. The guy can make every throw that you want him to, and even some you don't. From just spinning around and being able to just heave it 50 yards to making crossbody throws from one side of the field to the other without looking, just to Tyreek Hill, who's another player that's going to dominate for the next while. He's still young, and he is one of, if not the fastest guy we have ever seen on the NFL field. Right after Deion Sanders. And another guy I think is going to dominate the NFL for the next while isn't even in it. He's playing tomorrow in the national championship game. It's Joe Burrow. That's another guy. He is one of the best leaders that young we have ever seen at LSU. He's almost like a second coach on the field. Coach O said it. Every coach he's ever had has said is that guy is at the highest level an absolute baller. He can take over a game. In the semifinals for the college football playoffs, he threw for 7 touchdowns and a half against a great Oklahoma team. And whoever he goes to is going to have an absolute stud on his hands. I think he's going to dominate the NFL. I think he's going to be one of, if not the best players for the next decade. And he is one of those, it's hard to label these guys a lot of times, like Saquon was one of them. He's almost a can't-miss prospect. There's almost no way he can fail in the NFL unless his life takes a drastic turn. What about you, Nick?
So one of the guys I definitely think for the next decade that will be really good in baseball, which is my favorite sport, I would have to go with Ronald Acuna. The guy's just unbelievable on both sides of the field. He's an unbelievable power bat. He's got a great glove in the outfield, a cannon. He's quick as hell on the bases. He can really do everything. He's going to lead that Braves team into the future with him, like guys like Ozzie Albies, Dansby Swanson starting to hit his stride. I think that Braves team is really going to be lethal in the future with a guy like him leading the offense. Another guy that I really like is Gleyber Torres. When he came up in the beginning of 2018, guys really didn't think he was going to put up the power numbers that he showed. He came out of nowhere and put up 24 home runs in his rookie season. Kind of surprised everybody. And then he really shocked everyone when he came back the next year and put up 38 homers. Nobody ever expected him to have power. He was supposed to be a 300 hitter, give you a good enough defense where his bat covers it, just like how Jose had talked about with Chipper Jones. I think that guy could lead the Yankees. I honestly think he could be the next captain of the Yankees along with Aaron Judge in the future. He's a great player all around. I think as he gets older, the glove is going to continue to get better. I love the things that he does.
Another player that a lot of people are expecting a ton from is Lamar Jackson in these few years. Now, I know everybody is gigantically high on him. I don't necessarily know what we're going to get from him because the theme with modern day running quarterbacks is they get hit once or twice and they are out of the game and they're never the same. Look at RG3, look at a lot of these mobile guys, even Kaepernick. He was a tremendous running quarterback. Then he got hit a few times. He tried to stay in the pocket a little bit too much for what his arm talent was. And he really was never the same quarterback that almost won a Super Bowl against the Ravens.
For me, I'm going to cover a couple sports here. I'm going to go with some soccer and some basketball. For me, on the soccer end, I'm going to go with João Felix. So João Felix is a young Portuguese striker. Now, he just last season playing for Benfica put up a historic season for any rookie. This kid's 18 years old, and he absolutely dominated against guys who have been in the league for several years. And Ronaldo has recently taken him under his wing and is working with him to develop and become a better player. But what he does is just absolutely breathtaking. And to be as young as he is, and he's already up there competing with guys like Messi, guys like Ronaldo, Keller and Mbappe, guys like Neymar. This kid, he's currently on Atletico Madrid, where he's playing in the Spanish league, where he's got to see Barcelona, he's got to see Real Madrid, and he's going in there and he's playing just as good as any veteran. He is absolutely flawless. For basketball, it's a no-brainer. It's Luka Doncic. Luka Doncic is an absolute stud. He's in his second year into the NBA, and he's just absolutely dominating. There's no other way to say it. I mean, he's exciting. He makes interesting shots. He's driving to the basket. He has a ridiculous step back. He has range. There's nothing he can't do, and he's definitely on his way to being the next face of the NBA.
He's one of those guys where you look at him and you can't help but put the next LeBron tag on him. Obviously, he's not the same player as LeBron, but he's doing the same things he did as a young player. He's leading a great Mavericks team that really doesn't have as much talent on it as a lot of these other teams, and they are a force in the NBA right now. Luka Doncic is a tremendous scorer. He can pass the ball, he can rebound the ball, and he's paired up with a great guy in Porzingis, which just brings out even more talents with him, where if he can't make a shot, he can just lob it up to Porzingis, who can pretty much make any play on the court too. Another thing with Luka Doncic is he really doesn't have many downsides to him. His defense is way beyond what his age is, and part of that is from him playing in the pro Euro leagues instead of college, where he was able to mature earlier and earlier. But he's one of those guys where you have to label him as one of the better players in the league. What about you?
So another guy, it's tough to leave out of the conversation for the next decade, would have to be Juan Soto. His age 20 season, he put up numbers you do not see from a 20-year-old guy. He plays with the maturity of a 10-year veteran in the league. He's just an unbelievable bat. His defense got better in his sophomore season. I really think he can be an absolute monster in the next decade. He's really going to give the Nationals what they need for the next 10 years if they continue to build around him. I think they can be great with him.
That being said, we just had the end of the Chiefs-Texans game, and let me tell you what a ball game. No other way to say it.
Unbelievable.
What was the final scores on that?
It ended 51-31. The Chiefs won, which not even at the end of the first quarter, everybody thought it was over. The Chiefs were out. They were down 21-0. It's a pretty crazy game all around.
That just goes to show you who Patrick Mahomes is as an offensive leader.
Exactly.
That kid has got a cannon. He is on his way to being the next player, the next best player of the decade.
For sure.
I mean, they were down, what was it, 24-0 early?
I think 24-0 was
24-0 early, and he just started going off. I mean, in the second quarter, he just started piling it on. I mean, only 321 yards, which isn't eye-popping nowadays for a quarterback, but he threw for 5 passing touchdowns, which is absolutely incredible. Damian Williams with 2 rushing touchdowns, just to pair with it so they don't look one-dimensional. But that is insane. I mean, they were down 24-0, and they were able to battle back. That was an incredible game. It's great if you like high-scoring games and high-passing games. Pat Mahomes is an absolute baller.
Yeah, at one point, the Chiefs were on a 41 straight points they scored without ever seeing offense from the Texans, which is just unbelievable to think about. 41 straight points is just a lot of offense. They really just could not be stopped at that point.
And it's crazy to think about, too, because the Texans are also a great offensive team behind Deshaun Watson and DeAndre Hopkins.
Exactly.
And then, obviously on the other side, you got Travis Kelce, you got Patrick Mahomes, you got Tyreek Hill. And both teams have weapons on the offensive end, but for them to go in there, take a team like Houston, who has a good defense, and absolutely expose their flaws.
One of the biggest factors, it seemed like, in the game was the turnovers and protecting the quarterback. The Chiefs had 0 sacks allowed. A lot of their problems were self-inflicted early on, with Tyreek Hill fumbling on a punt and them having a blocked punt return. But the Houston Texans just fell apart at the end. They weren't able to hold on to the lead. They let the very explosive Chiefs offense come back into it, and then they just weren't able to protect the quarterback. Another thing was DeAndre Hopkins, 118 yards on 9 receptions, but he has 0 touchdowns, and he fumbled once. I don't think he lost the fumble, but it just shows the ball security and protecting the ball and how big of a part that was in that football game. Yeah, but what an exciting game, and after that we get one of the premier matchups where we have the Titans and Derrick Henry taking on Pat Mahomes and the explosive Chiefs for the AFC.
So as we speak right now, it's about to be kickoff for the Seahawks-Packers game. What you guys think is going to go on tonight with that?
Definitely going to be interesting, to say the least. You got Russell Wilson, who's just an all-around great talent. He's a phenomenal quarterback. And then they got a good receiving core over there in Seattle. The defense is great. And then you look at Green Bay, and they're another pretty well-rounded team.
Yeah, with that game, it is going to be very interesting. You have the Packers, who have tremendous talent all over the place. Their running backs are some of the best in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers is still a premier quarterback. Early on, it was looking like he could potentially be an MVP candidate till Lamar started to go off. And the Packers defense is probably the best Packers defense we've seen since their last Super Bowl run. So it's going to be tough. But Seattle has playoff experience. They have Russell Wilson, who, like he just said, in baseball, you talk about the guy with all the attributes as a 5-tool player. If there's a 5-tool player in the NFL, it's got to be Russell Wilson. He can make all the throws. He is about as dual threat as it gets. He is great from the pocket. He's great running around. He is one of, if not the future of the NFL for the next couple of years at least. I mean, maybe not 10 years in the future because he is around 30. But he is, for the next 4 or 5 years, he's going to be that gap guy from the era of Breeze and Brady to the era of Mahomes and Burrow. Guy is incredible. He can do everything. With that said, the receiving core is insane. You have Tyler Lockett, who is a premier speed guy. He's almost, I don't want to call somebody a poor man's anything, but he's a poor man's Tyreek Hill in the fact that he can do everything Tyreek Hill can. He's not getting as much exposure. He should after the season, but he's a great special teams guy. He is one of the fastest players in the NFL, and he can make every catch on the field no matter how hard. He's had a couple candidates for catch of the year. And DK Metcalf, we were talking about DK Metcalf. We were talking about he is one of the premier young receivers in the league. Everybody was getting on him. He has an insanely low body fat, and his combine scores were off the charts except for his 3-cone drill and agility drills, which made everybody question his lateral movement. They were the same things that were asked about Calvin Johnson, and DK Metcalf looks like a young version of Calvin Johnson right off the bat. He looks like he can be any team's number 1 receiver. Any team would be dying to have him right now. And with that, I think we should get into predictions.
Yeah, I'm gonna. Definitely a lot of different. Both teams have different strengths in some areas, but for me, I'm gonna have to stick with what I went with on our Instagram live video. I'm gonna have to go with the Seahawks. I think that you have Russell Wilson, who under pressure can move out of the pocket. He's versatile. Unlike these other running quarterbacks, he has an arm. So, I mean, I definitely think the odds are definitely in Seattle's favor. Nick?
Again, like Jose said, I'm going to keep with our predictions from our Instagram video. I think the Packers are going to take it. Aaron Rodgers just does great when he's under pressure. He can pull something out of anywhere. I like their chances tonight. I think they're going to move on.
I think for this game tonight, it's going to come down to who can do it with the last couple of minutes left. Aaron Rodgers has always been tremendous under pressure, always making all the throws, but he hasn't always been terrific in the playoffs. Then you have Russell Wilson, who is one of the better clutch players in the NFL. He can make all the throws. He is mobile. He's done what Aaron Rodgers has done for years, which is get out of the pocket, extending plays finding the open receiver when he needs to. He's able to run down the field for the first down. He always seems to know where that first down marker is and just gets enough every time. I think that it's going to come down to the quarterbacks, and I think the Seahawks take it in a close game. I think it might come down to whoever has it last.
With that being said, let's be a little bold here. Let's Super Bowl predictions. Let's pick your two teams. What do you guys think?
Are you doing this to me now? All right, so I'm thinking with my prediction of the Seahawks, that would be a Seahawks-49ers playoff game. The Seahawks have seemed to have the 49ers number all year. They won one game in a terrific overtime game. And then the second game, there was some controversy at the end. It may or may not have costed the Saints a first-round bye. But I think the Seahawks have what it takes to beat the 49ers, and I think they're going to get to the Super Bowl. I think the Titans are built perfectly to beat the Chiefs. The Titans, yeah. With Derrick Henry, their power running game is designed almost perfectly to power through the defensive line, which has looked weak against the run all year for the Chiefs. I don't think they're going to have to throw it a ton, but that play-action game is going to wreak havoc on the secondary of the Chiefs. I think the Titans get past them. I think it's going to be a Titans-Seahawks Super Bowl, and I have the Titans going all the way. It will be a wild card matchup as neither of the teams won their division. I think the Titans just have what it takes in every facet of the game. Their defense is solid. Their offense is borderline unstoppable right now with what we've seen in the playoffs. Derrick Henry has ran over two of the best defenses in the NFL these past couple weeks, and they shut down two of the best quarterbacks in the league these past 2 weeks. Right now, it doesn't look like they have a weak point. I have the Titans winning it all.
I'm going to counter that, and I'm not going to talk about the next round matchups. I'm going to go straight into the Super Bowl here, and I'm going Kansas City, San Francisco. I think it's Patrick Mahomes' time. I think, you've seen what he did last year against Tom Brady and the Patriots, and you look at this kid, and he's only getting better as he goes. He is now seasoned. He now knows what that playoff pressure feels like. It's time for the Chiefs to strive, and I think this year Patty Mahomes raises the Lombardi Trophy.
I like everything you said. That was going to be my prediction too. I think the 49ers can really do damage with this team and continue in the playoffs, and exactly what you said about Patty Mahomes. He's been a great guy so far. I think they can do it, and I think the Chiefs are going to take on the ring this year.
The only reason I don't have the 49ers in the Super Bowl is because, besides the Seahawks having their number all year, they are maybe the most balanced team we have seen in the NFL in a long while. It's always almost one side of the ball for each team. The 49ers are tremendously balanced except for one position. Jimmy Garoppolo doesn't look like he's necessarily the guy for the 49ers. He's made a lot of mistakes, and in that last playoff game, they looked like they took the ball completely out of his hands in that second quarter. They ran it 11 straight times, and it still was a close game. They weren't trying to kill clock. I don't know if Jimmy Garoppolo has what it takes to win a Super Bowl this season.
With that being said, guys, we're going to wrap it up here today.
So, Hunter, appreciate you joining us. Love the insight you gave us.
Thanks for letting me be here. I really enjoyed talking on this for the last couple hours. I think it was great. It was a good experience. I think we all had a lot of productive things to say.
Definitely had a lot of fun here today with that. With that being said as well, make sure to like, comment, subscribe, and share.
Stay classy, boys. Eat ass.